I never imagined that a single moment could completely destroy my world. That I would come home one evening, open the door, and see something that would change everything. But that's exactly what happened. That night, I got off work earlier than usual. It had been an exhausting day, and all I wanted was to pour myself a drink, sink into the couch, and unwind. I parked my car in the driveway, noticing that all the lights inside the house were off, except for one. Our bedroom. My forehead creased. Strange. My wife usually kept the hallway light on whenever she was home alone. I checked my watch. 9:15 p.m. She should have been in the living room watching her usual crime shows, waiting for me to come home. A cold prickle ran down my spine. I climbed up the steps, gripping my keys a little tighter than usual. As I reached for the door handle, something made me stop. Voices. Soft, muffled voices coming from inside the house. At first, I thought nothing of it. Maybe she was just on the phone or watching something on her laptop. But then, I heard something else. A laugh. Not just any laugh. Her laugh. My wife's. But it wasn't her usual lighthearted chuckle. There was something different about it. Something intimate. Then I heard a deep exhale. A sharp, breathless sound like she was enjoying something. I stiffened. My fingers hovered over the doorknob, my pulse quickening. Something wasn't right. I quietly set my coat down by the door and listened. The voices were coming from our bedroom. My stomach tightened. This didn't make sense. My wife was supposed to be home alone. Our son, my adopted son, should have still been out with his friends. So why was his voice coming from inside that room? I felt my throat go dry. I tried to push the thought away. It was ridiculous. There had to be a logical explanation. And yet, something about the way their voices overlapped. The low murmurs, the breathy sounds my wife was making, it didn't feel right. I stepped forward, my body moving on its own. The closer I got, the clearer the sounds became. I could hear her whispering something. I could hear him responding. Then another sound, a soft moan. I felt like the floor beneath me was about to crack open. No. My hands clenched in a fist. No. No. This can't be happening. I wasn't breathing anymore. I wasn't even thinking. I reached for the doorknob. I hesitated. I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to see. Because deep down, I knew whatever was happening inside that room, it wasn't something a husband should ever walk in on. I took one last breath and pushed the door open. The moment my eyes adjusted to the dim lighting, my heart stopped. My wife, my beautiful, loyal wife, was on the bed, her robe half open, revealing bare skin. And next to her was him, my adopted son. He was shirtless, his body hovering dangerously close to hers, his hands gripping the sheets, his lips parted as if he had just whispered something into her ear. She gasped, whipping her head toward the door as soon as she saw me. Jason." Her voice trembled, her hands flying to pull the robe tighter around her body. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. Everything felt surreal, like I was watching a scene play out in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. My son, the boy I had raised as my own, was sitting inches away from my wife, his face filled with something between shock and guilt. But he didn't move away from her. And that was when I knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a mistake. Something had already happened. I took a step back, feeling my stomach twist into knots. My breath came out ragged, uneven. My voice cracked. What the hell is going on here? My wife shook her head frantically. It's not what it looks like. I swear. Not what it looks like. I let out a bitter laugh. Those words. Those same pathetic words I had heard so many times before from cheating spouses in movies, from men who got caught sneaking around. Now my own wife was saying them, and she expected me to believe her? My son, our son, lowered his gaze, his jaw tightening. But still, he didn't move. He didn't even try to deny it. A sharp pain shot through my chest. I couldn't be here. I couldn't stand in this room for another second. I turned on my heel, storming out into the hallway, my heart hammering in my ears. Jason, wait! My wife's voice followed me, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I grabbed my keys, threw open the front door, and stepped out into the cool night air. I needed to breathe. I needed to think. But how the hell was I supposed to think when my entire life had just collapsed in front of me? I leaned against my car, staring up at the dark sky, trying to force oxygen into my lungs. What was I supposed to do now? What was I supposed to do when the two people I loved most in the world had betrayed me in the worst way possible? I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. I couldn't go back inside. Not now. Not when every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was the image of them, together. My stomach churned. I reached for my phone, and that's when I realized I had nowhere to go. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The cool night air did little to stop the burning rage simmering beneath my skin. My mind raced, replaying the scene over and over. My wife, my adopted son, together. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block it out, but it was useless. The image was burned into my brain. I had no idea how long I sat there, but eventually the front door creaked open. Footsteps, then her voice. "Jason." I stiffened. I couldn't look at her. Not now. She took a hesitant step toward the car. "Please just let me explain." "Explain? Explain what?" I let out a bitter laugh, finally turning my head to face her. "Explain how I walked into our bedroom and saw my wife practically wrapped around my own son?" Her lips trembled. "It's not what you think." I slammed my fist against the steering wheel. Don't insult me by lying, Kate." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't care. I had loved this woman. I had spent years building a life with her. I had given her everything, only for her to betray me like this. She wiped her eyes, sucking in a shaky breath. "Jason," I shook my head. "Where is he?" My voice was low, controlled, but underneath it was pure venom. She hesitated. I threw the car door open, stepping out. "Where the hell is he, Kate?" She flinched. He left. Coward. Of course he left. He didn't have to face the consequences. But she did. I took a slow step toward her. My jaw clenched. "How long?" She looked away. "How long?" She let out a shaky breath, her hands trembling at her sides. "Jason, please." "How long, Kate?" I bellowed, the rage I had been holding back finally bursting through. She squeezed her eyes shut. "A few months?" Everything inside me froze. Months? Not a one-time mistake. Not a moment of weakness. A full-blown affair. With the boy I had raised. The boy I had brought into my home. The betrayal cut deeper. I stumbled back, shaking my head. My breathing was ragged, uneven. "You've been doing this behind my back for months?" My voice cracked. Tears streamed down her face, but it meant nothing to me now. She chose this. She chose to ruin our marriage. "Jason, I never meant for this to happen," she whispered. It just did." I scoffed. "That's your excuse? It just happened?" She sobbed. "I was lonely, Jason. You've been so distant. Ever since your job started taking up more of your time. I felt like you didn't see me anymore." I stared at her in disbelief. "So, instead of talking to me, instead of telling me how you felt, you turned to my own son?" My voice was dangerously low now. She covered her face with her hands, her body shaking. But I didn't care. She wasn't the victim here. I was. I took a deep breath, trying to stop the room from spinning. "Do you love him?" Her head snapped up, her lips parted, but no words came out. That was all the answer I needed. I swallowed hard, my throat thick with emotion. "I hope he was worth it, Kate," she gasped. "Jason." I turned on my heel and walked away. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of watching me break. I stepped into the car, started the engine, and peeled out of the driveway without a second glance. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't be there anymore. 1 hour later, I sat alone in a motel room, staring at the ceiling. The whiskey bottle on the nightstand was half empty, but the numbness I had been hoping for never came. My phone buzzed. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again. And again. I exhaled sharply, grabbing it. 27 missed calls. All from Kate. I tossed the phone onto the bed, running a hand down my face. What was I supposed to do now? Was I supposed to fight for a woman who had betrayed me in the worst way imaginable? Was I supposed to go back home and pretend that everything was fine? No. I knew one thing for sure. I was never stepping foot in that house again. Not while they were in it. Not while the memories of what I saw still haunted me. I took another swig of whiskey, my jaw tightening. I'd given them my love, and they had spit on it. But they would regret it. Both of them. Because the moment I walked out that door, they lost me forever. To be continued. The whiskey burned as it slid down my throat, but it didn't numb the pain. Nothing could. I stared at my reflection in the cheap motel mirror, eyes bloodshot, face hollow. I barely recognized myself. I wasn't the same man I had been yesterday. That man had a wife. That man had a family. That man had a home. Now, I had nothing. Another buzz. I sighed, gripping my phone. Missed calls, 42 new messages, 19. All from her. I knew if I opened them, I'd find the same pathetic excuses, the same empty apologies. I didn't need to read them. I deleted every single message. Then my phone rang. I groaned, but when I saw the name on the screen, my stomach twisted. It wasn't Kate. It was him, my son, or rather, the boy I had once called my son. I clenched my jaw. My finger hovered over the decline button, but at the last second, I answered. Silence. Then a shaky breath. Dad. I stiffened. That word no longer belonged to him. My grip tightened around the phone. You lost the right to call me that. A heavy silence stretched between us. Then, in a quiet, broken voice, he said, I'm sorry. I laughed bitterly. Sorry? You're sorry. I swear. I never meant. Stop. My voice was sharp. Don't give me that. You knew exactly what you were doing. He swallowed. I didn't. Yes, you did. I snapped. You weren't drunk. You weren't forced. You made a choice. A choice to betray me. A choice to destroy everything I built for you. His breathing grew ragged. I didn't want this to happen, but you let it. Silence. I squeezed my eyes shut. Do you love her? He hesitated. That 1 second of hesitation was enough. I let out a shaky breath, my chest tight with grief. You do? His voice cracked. I don't know. My throat burned. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. I wanted to punch a hole through the damn wall. Instead, I whispered. You were my son. His breath hitched. I raised you. I continued, voice shaking. I gave you a home when you had no one. I taught you how to drive. I was there for your birthdays, your graduation, every single moment of your damn life. And this is how you repay me? I'm sorry. Those words meant nothing. I exhaled sharply, staring at the ceiling. You will never see me again. You understand? He choked on a sob. Please don't say that. I mean it. I didn't want to lose you, he whispered. I laughed coldly. Then maybe you shouldn't have slept with my wife. I ended the call. And this time, I blocked his number. I didn't go home. I didn't even step foot in the city. I rented another motel in a town hours away, hoping distance would dull the pain. It didn't. Every night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind trapped in an endless loop. Kate died. My son died. Their betrayal. I replayed it over and over, searching for where I had gone wrong. Had I been blind? Had I missed the signs? Or had I just refused to see the truth? The worst part? I still loved her. I still loved the woman who had shattered me. I hated myself for it. I took another sip of whiskey, barely flinching at the burn. Then, a knock on my motel door. I frowned. No one knew I was here. Cautiously, I stood, my heart pounding as I approached the door. Another knock. I peered through the peephole, and my stomach dropped. It was Kate. I stood frozen. How the hell did she find me? I considered ignoring her, pretending I wasn't here. But something in me, something deep, twisted, wanted to hear what she had to say. I unlocked the door. She looked different, pale, exhausted. Her eyes rimmed red, dark circles beneath them. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, can I come in? Her voice was small. I hesitated. Then, against my better judgment, I stepped aside. She walked in, wrapping her arms around herself as if trying to shield against the cold. I shut the door, but stayed near it. Distance. I needed distance. She turned to face me, her lower lip trembling. You're really not coming back, are you? I let out a humorless laugh. What do you think? She looked down. I thought maybe with time, you'd change your mind. I exhaled sharply. I won't. Her chin wobbled. Jason, I made a mistake. Mistakes are accidents, Kate. You made choices. She flinched. I crossed my arms. Why are you here? She bit her lip, eyes glistening. Because I still love you. I stared at her. She still loved me? I clenched my jaw. Then why did you do it? Tears spilled down her cheeks. I don't know. I scoffed. Not good enough. She took a shaky breath. I was lonely. So you slept with our son? She sobbed. I shook my head. You want me to forgive you? Is that why you're here? She nodded desperately. I just want another chance. I laughed, shaking my head. No. Her eyes widened. Jason. No, Kate. I took a slow step forward, my voice like ice. You don't get another chance. You don't get to come here and pretend that we can fix this. She sucked in a breath. I kept going. You destroyed everything. You took my love, my trust, and threw it away. And now, because you regret it, you think I should take you back. She cried harder. I sighed. Go home, Kate. She wiped her eyes. Please just don't hate me. I let out a breath. I don't. She blinked. I don't hate you, Kate. I exhaled, rubbing my temples. I pity you. She choked on a sob. Then, without another word, she turned and walked out. I watched her leave, my chest hollow. And for the first time in weeks, I felt free. The motel door shut behind her with a dull thud. And for a long time, I just stood there, silent, still. The smell of cheap whiskey and old carpet filled my nose, but the room felt different. Lighter, like something had lifted off my chest. I had expected her visit to break me all over again, to tear open the wound she and my son had left in my heart. But instead, I felt nothing. No anger, no longing, no sadness, just emptiness. And maybe that was worse. I grabbed the half-empty bottle of whiskey, staring at it for a moment. Then, without thinking, I dumped it in the sink. I was done drowning myself, done trying to wash away the past. I had been clinging to something that no longer existed. A marriage that was dead, a family that was a lie, and it was time to let it go. I never went back, not to our house, not to my old life. Instead, I moved 2 states away, found a small place in a quiet town where no one knew me. A fresh start. At first, it was strange being alone. I had spent so many years with a family, with responsibilities, with people who needed me. And now, I had no one but myself. And surprisingly, I was okay with that. I got a job at a local mechanic shop, fixing cars during the day, spending my nights sitting on my back porch, drinking coffee instead of whiskey. I stopped checking my phone, stopped wondering if she was still trying to call me. I didn't care anymore. But one evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, my phone vibrated on the table. An unknown number. For a second, I hesitated. Then curiosity got the better of me. I answered. Silence. Then, Dad? I stiffened. It was him. For a moment, I said nothing, just listened to his breathing. It was shaky, unsteady. Please don't hang up, he whispered. I swallowed hard, my grip tightening on the phone. I need to talk to you. I exhaled. Why? A pause. Then, his voice cracked. I ruined everything. I clenched my jaw. I had told myself I would never speak to him again, that I had cut that part of my life away. But hearing him like this, so broken, so lost, a twisted part of me wanted to listen. I ran a hand down my face. What do you want, Aaron? He sniffed. I need to see you. I nearly laughed. Why the hell would I do that? Because, he took a shaky breath. Because I don't know who I am anymore. My stomach twisted. I lost you, he murmured. I lost Mom. I lost everything. Good. That's what I wanted to say. That's what he deserved. But the words wouldn't come, because no matter how much I hated him, he was still the boy I had raised. And for better or worse, a part of me still cared. I let out a slow breath. Where are you? He inhaled sharply, like he hadn't expected me to ask. I'm in town, not far from you. I clenched my fists. This was a bad idea. I knew that. But despite everything, some small, broken part of me still needed to see him. Still needed to face what he had done. Fine, I muttered. 1 hour. At the diner on Main Street. Silence. Then, okay. I hung up. And just like that, the past came crashing back. I got there first. Ordered a black coffee. Sat in the corner booth. watching the door like a hawk. 15 minutes later, he walked in, and when I saw him, my stomach dropped. He looked rough, thinner, dark circles under his eyes. His once perfect hair was unkempt, his clothes wrinkled like he hadn't slept in days. He scanned the room, then spotted me. For a moment, he hesitated, like he wasn't sure if I'd actually let him sit down. But I didn't move. So, cautiously, he slid into the seat across from me. We sat in silence. The waitress came by, asked if he wanted anything. He just shook his head. Then, finally, he spoke. "I'm not okay," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. I scoffed. "No shit." He flinched, but didn't argue. Instead, he clasped his hands together, staring at them. I thought, he swallowed hard. I thought I could handle this. I thought if Mom and I just moved on, things would be fine. I stayed quiet. He exhaled. But nothing is fine. She and I barely talk. She's miserable. And me? He looked up. I feel like a monster. I studied him carefully. His eyes, those damn eyes, looked just like they did when he was a kid. Back when he used to come to me after a nightmare, begging me to check under the bed for monsters. Now, he was the monster. And he knew it. I took a slow sip of coffee. "What do you want from me?" He hesitated. I don't know." I sighed. "You expect me to forgive you?" His jaw clenched. "No." "Then why are you here?" He swallowed. "Because I don't know how to live with myself." For the first time I saw it. The regret, the self-loathing, the absolute misery he had created for himself. Good. He deserved it. But it didn't make me feel any better. I leaned forward, folded my hands on the table. "You made a choice," I said, voice even. "A choice that destroyed everything I built for you. You don't get to come here looking for redemption just because you can't handle the consequences." He inhaled sharply. I shook my head. "I don't owe you anything, Aaron. Not my time. Not my forgiveness." His shoulders slumped, and in that moment, I realized this was it. This was the last time we would ever speak. He knew it. I knew it. I stood up, tossing a few bills on the table. Before I left, I looked at him one last time. "You'll have to live with what you did," I said. "But not with me." And then, I walked away. He didn't try to stop me. Because he knew. He had already lost me forever. I never went back. Not to Kate. Not to Aaron. Not to the life I once had. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. But tell me, if you were in my shoes, could you ever forgive? Or would you walk away like I did?